The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para-X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you and daunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoke and gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr. And with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody tonight?
And tonight we are also joined by a special guest, I believe the founder of WASP Paranormal, Chris Harmon. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on, gentlemen.
It is a pleasure. If you would, Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and tell them all about you.
Yes, so my name is Chris Harmon, founding organizer to the Western Association for the Science of the Paranormal, also known as WASP, based out of here in the great state of Utah. Born and raised here, 39 years old, been married for 18 years to my lovely wife, got 4 wonderful kids, 2 cats and a bunny. In addition, referee for the Indies here in Utah for Devotion Championship Wrestling and Dive Wrestling, and as well as Ultra Championship Wrestling Zero. And then in addition, I'm a big fan of retro gaming, retro music, retro movies, and then big into the paranormal. That's who Chris Harmon is.
Yeah, you definitely sound like a guy that I could hang out with, man. Because
Nice.
I have all of those same interests. I'm a huge wrestling fan since, I watched Hogan win the title. I remember when Backlund and the Sheik fought, and the Sheik beat Backlund for the title. I go way back in wrestling. And I had the original Pong system for the TV back in the 70s, before there was even consoles, when literally the whole system was just Pong. You hooked it up and it was just the 2 rectangles and a little square, and I've rolled through every system since. So we have a lot of the same interests, which is really cool. As far as the paranormal goes, what got you into the paranormal? What got you interested in that in the first place?
Well, it's actually started for me back in the year 2000. There's a place here in Utah called Lagoon. It's the biggest amusement park other than Disneyland or any Six Flags, for instance. But here in Utah, Lagoon, it holds a big area, has a bunch of great rides. And you got the main area, which is all the rides and games. You got, Pioneer Village, which is historic because a lot of those buildings were back in Salt Lake or Rockport back in the 1800s, and they brought them into this area. So there's a lot of history behind them. And you also have Laguna Beach, which is a little water park area. Not very big, but it holds quite a few people and has a good time as well. When I was there in 2000, I was a games operator, and I had the opportunity to do the old-fashioned light gun game they had there in Pioneer Village. It no longer is standing. It's now into some type of shop. But when I was there, one night I was by myself, and about 20 minutes before we shut down the game, all of a sudden, all the items you shot at, including the ones that weren't working, all went off at once. Threw me for a loop. I'm like, how in the world is this all happening? And then once they are all done, there's this little walkway that's off to the west of the building where I was hearing footsteps, and only employees can go through this. So my first thought is, this has to be coworker or boss hopping in, come and help me shut the game down. But I go to meet them, and I'm like, they're very funny guys. That's a funny joke, because they did like to do a lot of pranks. But as I'm walking down this hallway, there's no one there. The door hadn't even moved. I even went walking around the game to try to see if I could find anything that would make to get an answer for this, and I could not find anything. So it left me asking a lot of questions to why did this happen, where, who, what. And even when I asked my boss, they're trying to say it was the hydraulic system they were using. And I even confirmed this with my other co-founder, Rick McBride, that there's no way that could happen. So there was a lot of questions that I had for it. And I never got a chance to really go ahead and investigate that place, because the family that owns the theme park does not believe in the paranormal. So they have a hard time letting groups come in and do their own thing. But it's always been a question of mine. How did that happen? What did it happen? Is it the history behind the buildings? So that kind of what really got me into the paranormal, as well as the old MTV show Fear. I mean, do you guys remember the TV show Fear that was on MTV back in like the 2000s?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I remember watching it.
Oh, yes. That show made me ask questions if I could go out and do this and see what answers I can develop. And I just remember watching the show, some of the stupid pranks that they would do or stupid tasks that they would do. And I'm like, if I ever had the opportunity to start doing this, I know I can go out there and do it. And as they said, as the old saying goes, the rest is history.
So are you guys like primarily a research-based group, or do you work like private residential cases as well, or what's primarily what you guys do?
We're open for any type of case, residential, commercial, if it's a business or even a historic landmark or area. Great example, one of our biggest clients that we work with is right in the middle of the Great Salt Lake is Antelope Island. And they have this historical site called Fildingar Ranch. We've been studying that since 2018 with a bunch of different things happening in there. But they're not the only clients. We deal with personal clients that ask for our assistance, that are bringing up great stories or sending us pictures, or like, we need to see what's going on behind this. And we've helped out quite a few people since 2017 when we got back up and running.
So do you guys have like, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. A lot of times people that are skeptics, or normies as I like to call them, they always want to see evidence. They want to see pictures. They want to see video. They want to hear audio evidence, such as EVP, stuff like that. And I found that there's literally no shortage of that kind of evidence. I mean, we've got tons of photographs. We've got video evidence. We've got audio evidence. We've got all kinds of evidence. But a lot of people just don't want to see it. You know what I mean? So do you guys do that as well, kind of like collect evidence and try to get that evidence out to people and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I feel when a client gives us an opportunity to explore their home, they have every right to know what type of evidence they got, and they have the right to choose whether or not to look at it. We've only had one client since 2017 that chose not to look at the evidence. They pretty much allowed us into their building to see if we can capture anything, and that was about it. But 9 times out of 10, all of the clients that we work with want to see what we gather. And when we have evidence to gather and evidence to share, we will be more than happy to sit down and show them what we got.
So have you ever had situations where, and this is kind of a hack question, this is one of those ones where you always expect to hear the question, so this will come as no surprise, but have you ever had one of those situations where you went into a place thinking that it was explainable, or at the very least thinking it was just some low-level kind of residential haunt, and then been very surprised by what was there? Or have you ever had a situation where something is way more dangerous than you believed it was initially going in?
Very good question. I love this question, actually. And I feel we've had some cases that have surprised us, I think is the best way to describe it. We've even had some cases that we go in thinking, no, we might be able to debunk this. And it turns out it was more dangerous than expected. In fact, we had a case in 2020 out here in Taylorsville, Utah. It was a residential. To kind of get the story of what happened, she owns her own business, was having a lot of issues with sleeping because of stress. She would go to bed in her actual bedroom and wake up on the couch without any explanation. And my first thought is, when I heard that, I'm like, okay, if she's stressing out because she owns this business and everything is stressing her out, you're going to have some type of sleepwalking where you're going to fall asleep and wake up somewhere else, was the first thought. She also mentioned that she couldn't go into the closet, that there was something dark in there she could not explain. And she also mentioned that whenever her spouse was around, it seemed like the activity wasn't as bad. So with this particular case, we decided to go ahead and do 2 different field studies on them. The first one was without the spouse, and the second one was with the spouse. The first time we were out there, we did pick up some evidence of something inside the closet. One of our paranormal techs, Amitav, had her SLS camera and was pointing it into the closet while Sabrina, who is our Wiccan, and Stephanie, who I know James Ash is familiar with, she was sitting outside the closet, and they were both doing a tarot reading. And all of a sudden, she picks up a stick figure right behind Sabrina, who's inside the closet. And it ends up jumping up into the attic area and disappears. But before that all happens, Sabrina came out and said something felt like it was touching me. And Emmett didn't even tell her there was anything behind her. But what made this case rather interesting is after the second field study, we all were affected in some shape or form where bad things were happening. Mine came when we decided to go on another investigation out to Fielding Gar Ranch. And what happened with me, going into any case, I've always got a plan. I've always got some type of idea of what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. I'll even ask for suggestions of what people would like to do. This night, I was gung-ho ready to go. I didn't care what we were doing. Not normally me. Another thing that happened was Justin, another founder of ours, was with me that night, and he said something, I'm not exactly sure what, but I snapped at him. And that's never happened before. And it confused him, it confused Sabrina and some other members. I ended up taking Stephanie, Emmett, and another friend of ours, Chris Lehman from Life After Life Paranormal, and taking them into this ranch house that's sitting in the middle of Fielding Gar Ranch. In 15 minutes into it, I have to excuse myself because I'm not feeling right. And they were asking me questions. One of them was looking at me, and I could not stare right at him. You could tell there was an attachment to me that was trying to possess me. And it was doing it right in this location where at this moment, or from this moment forward, I will not lead or go into an investigation without some type of protection, which gave us a very valuable lesson.
Yeah, that's so important. I'll tell you a little about what we do. My team on the East Coast here, we have an ordained exorcist. That's his job. That's what he does for the church. And he handles the cases on this coast. So the majority of the cases that I personally go on and work are either like demonic oppression, demonic attachments, those kind of things, or suspected at least. Because what happens is they send us in and we do an initial interview with the client. And then if we feel after the initial interview that it needs pursuing further, we'll go in and do an actual investigation. And then we give all of those results to the exorcist, and it gets run up the channels of the church. And if it's deemed that a exorcism is necessary or his intervention is necessary, then we schedule that and we go do that. So most of the cases that I'm involved in are those kind of cases. And a lot of times when you have people that are not feeling well and they're acting out in the way that you're talking about with snapping at people and just anger issues and that kind of stuff that's out of the ordinary, a lot of times what you're looking at there is either a demonic presence or at the very least a malevolent spirit that is very angry and that is acting out on you. And see, one of my specialties is actually emotional healing. And that's kind of like healing the soul and casting out demons from portions of the soul. It's a very complicated thing. I can go into it at some point in the future. It's a simple process, believe it or not, but it's complicated to explain. But that goes hand in hand with any exorcisms you do, any breaking of attachments you do, because one thing not a lot of people realize, and I'm sure that you're familiar with what I'm talking about here, but what not a lot of people realize is that when you come in and have to have an exorcism done or an attachment broken, that's not the end for you. A lot of people think that the exorcist comes in and it's done. That's not the case. First of all, you might have to have multiple visits before you see any results. It's a long process. And then there's a whole litany of things that you have to do afterwards to keep yourself good. Because once that doorway's been opened, it's very easy for that temptation to come again. And so basically my point was in this, that having a plan, like you said, is so important. And that's so good to hear, that you never go into a place without a plan. Because you'd be surprised, brother, how many people do. You know, they go in totally unprepared and they don't quite have an understanding of what they're actually dealing with. And they get themselves in a lot of trouble. So here's another hack question for you.
Okay.
What is the scariest experience you've ever had, either on an investigation or outside of an investigation?
I would have to say this Taylorsville case was the one that was probably the scariest, only because of the situation that came into play. A lot of things that you just pointed out, I agree with 100%. And on top of that, you got to make sure you're listening to your client to see what other things could be possibly happening, because you never know. And with that whole entire situation that happened in Taylorsville, it freaked me out, because that's the first time I've ever had some type of attachment. But I think there is another one I can bring up as well, too. And this is actually in the early days before WASP ever got to the point where it's at. Because back in 2009, we actually had a group called 4GH, or 4 Ghost Hunters. One particular location that we went to is up in Brigham City, Utah. I won't go into much of the details of the location, but there was a lot of intrigue because there was mentions about, devil worshiping in the area, because at the time, Brigham City was like the second highest in the nation, which was really alarming for many different reasons. But going into this place, it was deserted. It was also falling apart. So safety was a big concern, where we didn't want anybody getting hurt. But just the place, the feeling, the atmosphere, it left you unnerved, and it scared you quite a bit. Going back in time now to last year, we visited that site. It was me and my fellow founding organizer, Chris Black. And we went out there, and just on the land, because the buildings are no more, they ended up tearing them down. But we're on the land just trying to see if we could pick up anything. And as we're walking to the certain point where we know where the building was we were originally at, Chris giggles a little bit and goes, and the camera just died. And then his face changed. I had the millimeter on me, and it was sitting at a 7.7 with no electricity around him, cell phones turned off. There was no way that it would push this high. And he looked like he was about ready to toss his cookies. It would be a great example of it. And we ended up having to run from that spot to try to get into a safer area, because it was affecting him. And it scared me, where I told him, dude, you're no longer coming to this location. You're not protected enough to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of no matter how many times you've done this, no matter how many times you've been to a place, an attack can come quick. And it is a serious thing when it happens. Like I had my buddy Andy, who's on the team here on the East Coast. We're doing an event this weekend up at St. Albans, trying to raise money for the place, because they have some structural issues that need to be taken care of. And I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of investigating that place, but it is a spectacular place. It's one of the most haunted places on the East Coast. It's amazing, and it kind of never disappoints. And they need to put a new roof and all this stuff on the place. So anyway, we're doing an event up there so that we can raise money for them. But one time, I think it was 2 times ago that we were there, Andy was upstairs. And Andy is a very seasoned investigator. This dude has been doing this for like 30 some years. So he's got a lot of experience. And he was upstairs and he was just hanging out. You know, we weren't even doing anything at the moment. We weren't working on the spirit box. We weren't doing EVP. We were just hanging out. And all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, he gets this massive attack, and it doubles him over, and he falls to the ground, and we had to drag him out of there. I mean, it got that bad. And so I guess the lesson here for everybody listening is, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how many times you've done this before, never take it for granted that you're safe. Always protect yourself, always pay attention, because that stuff can happen at any moment.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And attacks, it can range from many different things. Another great example is out on Antelope Island's Building Guard Ranch. We hold ghost tours out there. And on the 27th of September back in 2020, one of the last ghost tours we actually held, around 10 o'clock at night, we had mysterious things happen. 2 of the patrons that came out went out to this wooded area that is on the east side of the island. And when they came back, they had scratch marks on both sides of their shoulders, both identical. And that was alarming by itself. But at the same time, the barn that we had our presentation in and everything, we started smelling smoke in there, and we almost thought there was a fire going on that we could not find. They ended up calling out the fire department to come take a look. They could not find anything. Attacks happen no matter where.
And kind of along that same line, here's a research type question for you, just to find out where you stand on the subject. because there's some division in the paranormal world as far as poltergeist activity goes. Some people think that it's just a very powerful and very angry spirit that can do it. And then there's a whole nother train of thought where it's almost like telekinesis that takes place primarily in adolescent girls, to where a lot of these cases where you have poltergeist activity, you find that you have a adolescent girl or a young teen girl in the household, and it's almost like a telekinetic activity that's going on, that the child is actually causing it, not a spirit that's causing it. And you have documented cases on both sides of that argument. And it's not really an argument, but it's just a debate in the paranormal field of, what do you think? What do you think is causing poltergeist activity? Is it one or the other? Or are you like me and happen to think that it's probably a little bit of both, depending on the case?
I'm going to have to agree with you and say it just depends on the case. It could be a little bit of both. Teenage girl-wise, are you referring to a spirit or the person that is involved in the situation?
No, I'm referring to a living human child in the house.
Okay. When it comes to that, I've never experienced anything in my years of investigating where we've had that moment come up and asked. So it's a very good question. When it comes to poltergeist activity, I think it has to depend on the energy of the home, what's going on there that causes all this. And it could be the history as well, too, that I want to point out, because if you have a situation where there was any type of violence, or even someone may have gotten killed or murdered at this location, I think the energy goes up more where the power can happen for poltergeist activity to happen. That's just what I would look at it in that perspective. Have I seen poltergeist activity through anything that we have done investigating? I can honestly say no, we have not had that yet. That's the nice part about it. But I can't say that it's not out there because people have experienced it.
Yeah, we've had some on a limited basis, to where it's not like whole chairs or tables flying across the room like on a movie. But we'll have like cat balls being pushed across the floor. We'll have sometimes we'll use like little toy cars and stuff like that have wheels, and the spirits will move them across the floor sometimes. That kind of stuff, it's like on a limited basis, but I think it would kind of qualify for the same thing.
Yeah, I would think that would count as poltergeist activity.
See, the difference between me and James, though, I live in California, so everybody knows that Staring has Tales of the Abyss in Virginia/West Virginia, Pennsylvania area, and I have California, Southern California, sometimes Nevada, but mostly Southern California. Now, Victorville Cemetery, we have a lot of things that's happened. The Wraith is one of them. It has called us out by name, has attacked my group, made people sick. James knows this place very well because Shadows Mafia also goes there a lot. That's Daryl's group, and a couple other groups go out there. And it's famous because I guess, I forget who was out there. It was a famous writer or something in the 20s used to stay there too, before they made the cemetery. So I can't say the name of it because you can get in a lot of trouble because they own the rights. So I'll just say it's cemetery in Victorville. But we have a lot of problems there. People been attacked, got sick. I've seen demons, everything you can think of, shadow people, entities, ghosts, things said stuff to us. They knew our names. James never been to California. It calls them out all the time. Just like I've been called out in Pennhurst, never been there. I've been called out in West Virginia, all these places. Even on one of the things James and Andy did last month, they called me out. These things are pretty nasty, especially when I went to Redlands. And it attacked a couple of my people. It attacked my camera guy right in front of me. It was pretty bad because even when I come home, I have stuff I have to deal with because I've never really got attacked. I've felt stuff and stuff watching me, but I'm different than most people. I'll do the most craziest things. I went down in a cellar where they did all kinds of sacrificing. People died. They said that no one can do it. I went down there for 15, 25 minutes blindfolded. No one's ever been there longer than 15 minutes. Well, not no more because I did it. But yeah, I've dealt with so many things out here because California's got so much stuff, but it's so hard to go to because they charge you for everything out here. So that's the other thing. But what did you, when you went to, because a lot of people don't realize I met him in the Para-Unity thing in Nevada, Las Vegas, at the MGM. I met Chris and his group there, and he showed me a lot of footage. When you were there, did you guys do anything in Vegas, or did you end up not doing anything, just going there for the convention?
So the only thing we really did, majority or some of our team members, excuse me, we went and saw Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum and took a look at this location just to see how it felt and everything, which I can tell you the atmosphere does feel really all over the place with that location. Unfortunately, we didn't get an opportunity to go and investigate any particular place, which if we had the opportunity and the time, because a lot of us were there just for the weekend, if we had the opportunity and the time, we would go out there and check out some places, which I think will be our next big opportunity. But really, the only thing we were able to do was check out Zach Bacon's Haunted Museum out there.
So when I was there, I was in a 5-star resort in the Wind, but they said it was supposedly by this old hotel that the Rat Pack used to stay there. Frank Sinatra, all these other Sammy Davis Jr. and all them all stayed there, and they said it was haunted. I could feel it though because it was across the way. But when we were in our room, my camera guy and his wife said they saw a red light the whole night in the room moving. And then I felt something watching me in my room. And then we left and they stayed there because we left for the night. We let them have the night by themselves because I wanted to get home early. The daughter said she felt something watching me all the time. So did I when I was there. It was really weird. Vegas has a really weird vibe to it. Even when I was at the MGM, when we went to this Unity thing, I felt something the whole time watching me. I don't know what it was, but maybe somebody brought something, but I don't know. Did you get that vibe when you're there?
So it's interesting you bring up the hotel that you stayed at. Was it the El Cortez by chance?
No, it's the Wind.
Okay.
It's the 5, but I think that hotel you're talking about is across the way.
Yeah, because that's where actually me and my other founder and another member were staying at, was the Cortez. And I've heard stories about that place having activity. And unfortunately, we weren't in the part that did have activity. We were in another part. It didn't feel like much was going on there. As for the Para-Unity convention itself, I can almost guarantee you it is common for people to bring attachments with them. And I would not be surprised if there was a lot of attachments there that was keeping an eye on everything. So to answer your question, yeah, I did feel that quite a bit, James.
And another thing, so everybody knows we were at this thing because I talked about it when I came back from my vacation. So we did an episode about this. So and I even talked about I met you out there, but just let everybody know what that Para-Unity was, so everybody knows, because I told them a little bit, but now you were actually a part of it. I was just there as a spectator, fan kind of thing. But tell us how that was.
So the Para-Unity convention is something I was excited to be a part of. It was our first event that WASP was able to be a part of outside of Utah. So getting to meet other groups, other people was fantastic. Sharing evidence, having the moment to do our presentation at 10 o'clock in the morning in one of the rooms was a lot of fun. And from my understanding, we were like the busiest out of everybody at that time, unless you were in the main hall. The experience there was a lot of fun because I got to meet a lot of great people I look up to, like the Tennessee Rake Chasers is actually one of my favorite paranormal groups because I like how wholesome they are and how good of people they really are, and they're honest. And we had a chance to sit and talk for a moment. I got a picture with them. Really great guys. Got to meet Taps, got to meet, oh man, so many other great people. I can't name them all. I still remember showing this particular piece of footage to the Ghost Brothers and just remember hearing them go, oh man, that's the devil, because they never seen anything like that from a paranormal investigation, which was the craziest thing. I had a great time at the event. I won't get into, there were some downsides to it. Being a part of the event, I was hearing a lot of things that was going on, but we'll digress from that. Me, our psychic medium, Stephanie, who was right next to us, and then our paranormal tech and our friend Chris Langman was right next to us. So we had Utah Unity right there for the Para Unity convention. People got to know us, have a good time. I really enjoyed myself and got to meet a lot of great people like you, James, for instance, and your family and friends. Great bunch of people, and learned a lot from other groups, and had the chance to get our name out there and talk to them a little bit more. And I think the one thing that stands out that I've been talking to a lot of people about is this whole entire thing that's going on with Waverly Hills that I knew nothing about until I went to the event. And that tugged on my heartstrings as a paranormal researcher, because our goal is not to make money. Our goal is to get out there, help people out, get the answers that they're looking for, and help get rid of the issue that's going on to the best that our knowledge and experience we can do. And to hear what's going on there at Waverly Hills with the board of directors, or this historical group that they put together trying to take over the building and kick off the original owners off the property, is just a sad story to talk about.
Yeah, you have a lot of that kind of stuff that goes on. Up here on the East Coast, one of our things that we're dealing with a lot is you will have these ghost tour companies now that will come in and rent out places like Penthurst or Moundsville or something like that for either the entire summer or for months at a time. And so then what they do is they'll rent the place out so nobody else can investigate it. And then they will like double the price and then charge teams to come in to investigate for double what they would have to pay originally. And it's kind of, I don't know how I feel about that, man. Honestly, I don't like the fact that these places charge people to come in the first place, because that really limits the amount of research that can get done. But I understand they have bills to pay. They have to keep the place up. I get it. But when you have these predatory type companies that come in and rent a location out for the entire summer, and then you just have to pay double what you would ordinarily pay to go in, that's kind of dirty, I think.
I agree with you there, James. We have a place out here that's like that as well. A couple of places. One of them, or actually both of them, who have been featured on travel channels, Ghost Adventures. And one of them is Case Cross, where when I asked about trying to go out there and investigate it, they wanted $100 an hour for us to investigate, which I'm like, that's a lot of money. No, we're not going to do that. And then the other place is Asylum 49 out in Tooele, which we were recently nearby for another case. And I talked with my paranormal tech who went out there with our psychic medium, and they did some classes. And they were charging $100 for these classes, which you got 5 classes, but majority of the time, all it was watching Ghost Adventures, which I think I'm like, so you're taking the fame of the place just because it's been on TV and making money off of it. I get 100% that you have to pay to keep the place up and running for whatever reason, but I just feel that, I'm not a big fan about it.
And one thing also that I would say, and I'm going to be very careful when I say this because I don't want to ruffle feathers of anybody, because I always try not to insult people or anything like that. But you have the ghost hunting that is on TV. And then you have the actual ghost hunting, if that makes sense. Like a lot of these TV shows are not reality. That's not what an investigation actually is. A lot of it is scripted. And the problem I see a lot is you have people that are just starting out in the paranormal field, and they go into these places and they try to emulate what they have seen on one particular TV show that they really like. So they'll go in there and they'll try to provoke spirits. They'll try to act all big and bad like they saw somebody do on TV, and they just end up getting hurt. And this is leading into my next question to you, is one thing I always stress when we're talking about investigations and stuff is protecting yourself. Like, my team is primarily a Christian-based team on this coast. I'm a pastor. Andy is a demonologist. We have an exorcist on the team. So we handle things from a Christian point of view. We do anointing and prayer before we go in, and we do anointing and prayer after we get out and we deal with a lot of the emotions that come up in the thing through emotional healing and all those kind of things. And so there's a process that we go through every investigation to make sure that everybody is safe and that everybody comes out okay. So what would be your process that you guys go through over there for investigations?
Another great question. I love this one, James, because each group is different. Not every group is going to be Christian oriented, or not everybody's going to believe in some type of religion, and that's their choice. That's their prerogative. All respects to them. With us, we have different things. We have Wiccans. We have people that study Reiki, for instance. And of course, our psychic medium, Stephanie, who's a part of the team. I have Rick, who's a druid. And each of them have a special skill to protect each other. And one of the things that we will use is the gems. Like, I do have a necklace that I put around me every time we go on an investigation that does help protect me. In the long run, I will always do some type of prayer inside of myself to try to protect everybody as much as possible. In the end, when we get done with the case, we do have to cleanse. We have to make sure that we are cleansing to get rid of whatever's been there that may try to attach with us. So we do have 3 to 4 people that know how to cleanse and does an excellent job on it. We have Crystal and Stephanie, who are both Reiki specialists, so they know how to handle Reiki to keep everybody safe. I know Crystal also knows how to create herbs for protection purposes, so that way nothing gets attached to you. That we've tried at the beginning of the case and we've tried at the end of the case, and it seems to help as well too. But it's good to see that there's different groups out there that does different things. One thing about us is we try to make sure that we're working with every single group. We will not bash on any group for their thoughts and their opinions about the paranormal, because I think we all can agree that we're all trying for the same thing, is to get answers, to help others. And if we can all work together instead of against each other, you'll learn new ways to handling things. And I think that's one of the best things about it.
Amen, brother. I love hearing that, because there's way too much drama and fighting in the paranormal field. And the way I look at it, we have a tough enough time trying to convince normal people who don't believe any of this stuff exists of what's going on without fighting amongst each other. You know, like my team here on the East Coast, primarily Christian. We handle things in a Christian way. Old Boy's team on the West Coast is pagan, right? We do a show together, we have for many years, and we're brothers, man. I love that dude. I would die for Old Boy. I trust him with my life. You know what I mean? There's no reason why any of us can't get along and why we should be fighting based on our belief system. That doesn't make any sense. Like, from my standpoint, I'm a Christian and I'm a pastor, and Jesus called us to love each other. He didn't call us to judge each other. He didn't call us to say, I'm better than you because of this. Because the truth is, I'm not any better than anybody else. I'm just forgiven. You know what I mean? I'm a sinner the same way everybody else is. I'm no better. And I think that idea that based on our belief system, we can't get along, that a lot of people have, is absolute garbage. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. And I'll speak to the other Christians out there listening, because that's what I am. Jesus did not call us to judge our brothers. He called us to love our brothers. And if your brother is doing wrong, he's going to have to face God on that. That's not up to you to decide. Your job is not to judge him. Your job is not to belittle him or down him or make him feel bad. Your job is to love him and give him a helping hand up if he needs it. I mean, that's my viewpoint on it. And I think if we all looked at it that way, the field would be a lot better, and basically the world would be a lot better.
That I totally agree with. Amen to that, James. We should be working together instead of against each other. That case in Taylorsville that I mentioned, the first time that we went out there was the first time we worked with Amitav, who is our paranormal tech. And she had nothing but positive to say about how we acted as a team, because we weren't at each other's throats. As a leader to this group, that's how I act. I act as a leader. I don't say we do everything by the book. I listen to my team and ask them, hey, what do you want to try? Is there something that you've seen that may work for us? And we give it a chance. If it works, awesome. We try it again in the future. If it doesn't, we look at why it didn't work and we can revisit it another time. So if we're all working together and loving one another instead of going after each other's throats, this this field would be a lot better.
Yeah, we all have stuff that doesn't work sometimes. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. I had a case that I went into, and I was a little amped up about this case because it sounded on paper like it was going to be an absolute extravaganza. You know what I mean? We had doors slamming. We had weird sounds of footsteps and stuff like that going on. We had the client saying that the house itself sounded like it was breathing, right? So going in, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be good. You know what I mean? This is going to be something cool. And if we're getting called in, it's because people are feeling oppressed, they're feeling attacked, they're feeling uneasy in their own home. So it's something we need to investigate because there's a thought that it might be a demonic presence there. Otherwise, we wouldn't get the call, right? So I'm going into this thinking this is going to be like the Super Bowl, man. This is going to be amazing. And I get there and I'm amped and I'm ready to go. And we've done our anointing, we've done our prayer. I'm ready to go in there and kick some demonic ass, man. And I get in there and I'm able to debunk pretty much everything. The house breathing sound was an old furnace that wasn't functioning properly. The door slamming was because there was a cross breeze downstairs. When you opened the door and you cracked a window in the other room, the door would slam. Like every single thing that was described to us, there was a scientific and logical explanation that could explain it. And it was kind of funny to me because I've had cases where I went in and didn't expect anything, and it's been crazy. And this is one of those cases where I went in expecting something crazy to happen and expecting it was going to be this amazing investigation, and it was absolutely nothing going on. I mean, we got 0 EVP, we got 0 on the spirit box, we got nothing. And everything was able to be explained. So do you ever have cases like that too, where you go in expecting that it's going to be all cool and then it's all explainable, which is cool in its own way?
Mm-hmm. Actually, no, this is another great question. I love these questions that you guys come up with, so thank you very much. First thing I'm going to point out before I talk about one of the cases that we had, our team, we talk to each other about making sure that we're skeptics first before believers. And the reason why I say that is not everything is paranormal. And that's one thing a lot of these new investigators get into is they think they hear something like this happening. Oh, there's got to be activity. Take it easy, calm down. I know we want to see something because the paranormal, it's hard to capture evidence with your eyes and your ears. Sometimes you want to use your body to handle that, but you got to come in as a skeptic first. This case, actually, we posted it on YouTube for our YouTube channel. This was a place up in Ogden near a city called Taylor. And the situation was, she was telling us about situations that were involving the pets, hearing things. If I recall, they sent us video of what they thought was orbs flying around. But a lot of the stuff we could debunk as being part of it. Like they had the whole entire Alexa set up, and there was a infrared light that would come up on her security system when all that was just the IR light in the system being caught on camera. Because when you got night vision and IR, you're going to see that light, but you're not going to see it all the time of how dim it is. This case was actually rather disappointing because the one thing that we ran into, and this is one thing I'm going to tell a lot of investigators that are out there, if you can, try to get as many people out of the house that you can. If they've got friends they can hang out with, if they need to go to the store or something, make it where it's not a lot of people there. And one of the reasons why I said that was she lives with her daughter-in-law, or her daughter and son-in-law, and her grandchildren. And 4 of them were still there. 3 of them are downstairs. The son-in-law is in his room watching TV, and it ruined everything. No EVPs, no special video. We really didn't capture anything that caused anything to happen.
Yeah, I imagine in that situation, you probably had a lot of cross-contamination going on as well, to where you weren't even sure
absolutely.
What you were hearing is what you were actually hearing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely agree there, James.
Yeah, I think the idea of trying to explain it logically first is always the way to go. When we go into a place, we're going in, there's a reason they call it investigation, because you are going in and investigating. You're not going in just to do paranormal research. if you're going into a private residence most times. That is a true investigation where you're going in, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Now, if you're going in a place like St. Albans or Moundsville or Pennhurst or someplace like that, Hillsdale House, something like that, you know those places have activity. So that's where it gets more, I think, into the realm of actual paranormal research, because you know full well there's activity there. So now you get to play around a little bit. You get to experiment, okay, what is the best way to communicate? You know, if I try this, will this work? One thing that we've done at some of these locations that actually surprised me was a lot of times when you go on an investigation and you're doing spirit box work, for example, or like Phasma box or something like that, and you're not getting a whole lot of response. One thing we started trying to do is just totally ignore the spirits. Don't ask them questions anymore. Just talk amongst ourselves like they're not even there. And what we found a lot of times is the spirits will actually start to interrupt you. They'll kind of jump into your conversation over the Phasma box because I guess they feel left out or something. They're like, hey, you're here to talk to us and you're not even paying attention to us. And it was kind of a funny thing, but it was also a surprising thing because it was an idea that Andy had. He said, let's just try this and see if it works. And I said, yeah, let's give it a shot because we're not getting anything right now. And believe it or not, it worked wonders. I mean, these things jumped right onto the box and they started talking like crazy because we weren't paying any attention. And another thing we did at St. Albans the last time we were there, which was really cool, is Mandy, one of our team members, played music because she wasn't getting any real responses. The spirits were talking back and forth on the Phasma box to each other, but they weren't answering questions. So she decided she was going to play some Johnny Cash and see what happened. And the interesting thing about that, and I couldn't play it on the show because of copyright stuff. So I couldn't put it on YouTube. I couldn't put it on the radio show, nothing. But when she pushed play and the music began, within a second or two, complete silence over the Phasma box. Nothing. Not a peep. Until the end of the song. And then once the song ended, as soon as it ended, they went right back to talking amongst themselves like at a very rapid rate. But during the actual song, when she was playing it, absolutely nothing. And I thought that was one of the most amazing and intriguing things I had ever seen.
You know what? I can add to that as well, too, because we've done the music experiment out here in Utah. For everybody who knows Utah very well, one of the biggest religions out here is Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church. And the place out there in Fielding Gar Ranch was ran by the church for many years. And one of the things we decided to do was start playing some music to try to see if it would respond to it. I've done a couple of classical hits like Beethoven, for instance, the Bach's major hits that you know of. But we also played an LDS hymn called I'm a Child of God. And we noticed when we played that, we were getting more responses with that than anything else. We think there was children spirits who were listening to it and really enjoying it, but we were getting more evidence with it than any other form. I was very impressed with it. Yeah, the music trick when it comes to EVPs or just trying to see if something happens is remarkable.
See, my working theory on this, one, you have music that, like in the case of the hymn, of people that may have heard that in life and they like that music. But my working theory on just music in general and the way it affects spirits is I believe that there is a doorway between their realm and our realm, their dimension and our dimension, whatever you want to call it. And I believe that probably the way that doorway operates is through frequency. I think that's why they use energy. Like your batteries will get drained when you go into a place with a lot of activity, because a lot of people think that they need that energy to either manifest or audibly manifest. But I'm thinking maybe that what they use that energy for is actually to create a form of a portal in that doorway to open it up so that they can come through to speak with you. And I don't think that they need the energy so you can hear them. I think you can hear them if they're here. But I think the energy is to actually open that doorway. And I think that what purpose that might serve is the frequency of the sound, because we all know that frequency can heal and frequency can also destroy depending on the frequency. So there is power in those sound waves. So I'm thinking maybe it has something to do with the key that opens up that door is frequency. And maybe that's why the response to music is the way it is. What do you think about that theory?
I like that theory, actually. It makes sense. I noticed with this place I keep talking about, Filmingard Ranch, we believe there is some type of portal out there that is causing all this activity, because every time we've gone out there, it's been different every single time. And my first thought is, how is the portal working and everything? But your frequency assessment, I think that's pretty incredible.
And I think also, like, there's several people that have used crystals, and that's used a lot in the pagan community. And one thing that crystals are really, really good at is capturing different forms of energy. So I think that maybe we could even say that crystals could be used in the paranormal in that way, to capture and to harness those frequencies, that energy, in order to make it easier to open up that doorway and to have communication. And there are a few boxes that have been made that use crystalline technology in the boxes. And I think that assists a great deal in harnessing that energy. It's a fascinating subject. I haven't worked out the science of it yet. I'm still working on it, because that's something I did in a previous life. I was a scientist. I've done that work. So that's kind of where my mind goes, to that form of it. I haven't figured it out completely yet, but it's something that I'm working on in my head that I think there is some merit there. If I can just figure it out correctly, I think that there's some merit.
Well, being a paranormal investigator, we all have different thoughts and theories on how the paranormal works. I'm actually working on something right now that I want to try to do as much research as possible to come up with a conclusion, but involves the whole entire thing about the boogeyman, a monster underneath the child's bed, or in the boogeyman coming out of the closet, because it brought a lot of questions of, like, what if the child is seeing a spirit that is coming out of the closet because there's some type of portal that it just keeps coming through, or underneath their bed. And there's been a couple of times I've been able to talk with a child to see if they can draw a picture of what this entity is that they saw that came out of their closet or underneath their bed. And there have been a few of them that I've gotten that have been rather interesting, to say the least. But I feel when it comes to a child saying something about seeing a monster underneath their bed or a monster coming out of their closet, we all have to remember that children are much more grounded to earth than us adults, that they actually will see more than what an adult will. And they're frightened by it. But as adults grow older, a lot of times, if they're skeptical to begin with, they're like, you're just seeing something, go back to bed. When in reality, your child is actually seeing something. I think there is some merit to this whole entire situation, for instance.
And that theory that you have there actually has biblical standing as well. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Children are innocent until they reach a certain age of understanding, to where they're held blameless. So they're still spiritually pure at that age. That's the same reason animals can see a lot of paranormal activity that we don't, is because they are also spiritually pure. They're not sinful like we are. So up until that age, children are still more connected to the spiritual world than adults are, because they're not jaded yet, is a good way to say it. What basically happens is, as you live your life, you go through traumas. And those traumas actually create a wound on your soul. Now, that wound on your soul will have an attachment of an emotion, if that makes sense. So if you feel fear in that traumatic moment, then fear will be attached to that wound in your soul. And a demon will come along and it will use that emotion of fear to attach to that section of you and to oppress you and to do things in your life and hurt you. And one thing that also does is it dulls your spiritual awareness of what's going on around you. Now, some people that are psychics and stuff like that, they have a much more active sense of the spiritual realm, but a lot of us lose it as we get older. You know, I saw a lot more stuff when I was a kid than I see now, because I've have a whole lifetime of experience beating me down, you know. But I think that ties in with that theory as well, the fact that children are more in tune with the spirit world because they're more pure than we are, because they're still at that age of innocence before they are held responsible for sin and before they have a chance for their soul to get wounded and fragmented. Because when a wound occurs on the soul, what your soul does, and this is an amazing thing that the soul does, if you have the emotion of fear attached to that wound on your soul, the soul will actually section off that little part of the soul that has experienced that trauma, and it will wall it off from the rest of the soul. That way you don't go through the rest of your life feeling fear all the time. You only have fear when you bring up that traumatic experience or memory. It kind of walls it off from you. And that's an amazing thing that it does. But what it also does is it chips away little by little at that spiritual awareness that you have. Christians would call it being able to see God or to hear God, hear the voice of God. That spiritual awareness. You know, pagans would call it something completely different, but it's the same thing for all of us. Regardless of what you believe, it's still the same. It's just how you explain it is different. But I think that can tie into that theory that you have very, very well. And I think that could explain why children see things under the bed and come out of the closet that we don't anymore. It's not that those things don't exist as we get older. They're still there. We just can't see them. So in essence, the boogeyman never left. You just lost the ability to see him.
Very valid. I like that. I'm going to put that in with my study. I think that's really good.
We are running completely out of time. We have been talking, and this has been a wonderful, wonderful show. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on, and you are welcome back whenever you want to come back. But with this last bit of the show, I want you to go ahead and plug anything you want to plug, any kind of appearances or your YouTube channel or anything else that you would like to plug. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. So if you want to see more of what WASP does, just go to our YouTube channel, type up WASP Utah. You should be able to pull us up. We've got tip videos on there. We've got some past investigations, including TV appearances with our local news channels that you're able to watch and experience. In fact, to find out more about Gar Ranch, there is a few videos on there of us being out there, which is absolutely amazing. So check that out. I also want to take this time to thank our new sponsor that just sponsored us, Dark Prime Collectibles out in Clearfield, Utah. Just go into darkprimecollectibles.com and you should be able to see what they have available, or go check out their Facebook page, Dark Prime Collectibles, and see what they've got. Otherwise, just thank you very much for having us. I'd love to come back and talk some more with you guys.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime you want. Oh boy, we got about 2 minutes, brother, if you want to go ahead and do your shout outs.
Thank you again, Chris, for coming on. Thank you for listening to us on ParaX Radio on Sundays and for the Best Of show on Tuesdays. If you want to follow us on YouTube, follow James Hershey's YouTube page. You can see all the new and old episodes. If you want to buy merchandise, I'll tell you where to go. Just so you guys know, my new book for the Hershey universe is out soon. We're still waiting for it to be published, but it's almost done in the next week or so. Demon Wars Volume 1, The Empty Throne. You guys check it out. You'll love it. I hope you guys have a good night. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Monster Lovers, Demon Hunters, I love you. And blessed be. Have a good night.
I'd like to thank Chris for joining us once again. I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the show. And we will catch you on the next one. Until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.